Clarification Team, the SIT on black money, has called for a total ban on cash transactions above 3 lakh rupees. Sending its fifth set of recommendations to the government, the SIT has asked for such large cash transactions to be made illegal and punishable. Not just that, the SIT has also asked for an upper limit of 15 lakh rupees to be imposed on cash holdings by individuals and companies. If anyone or an entity wants to hold more cash than 15 lakh rupees, they must take permission from the commissioner of the area. So remember, these are recommendations made by the SIT to the government. To discuss both the income declaration scheme as well as the SIT's recommendations, joining us now is Dinesh, the CEO of Dhruva Advisors. Mr. Kanabar, appreciate you joining us. Let me start by asking you about the SIT recommendations before I get to the IDS, because perhaps this is the simpler one to address. What do you make of both of those recommendations? A, bringing in a law to make it punishable to transact anything above 3 lakh rupees in cash, and B, the upper limit as far as cash holding to be pegged at 15 lakh rupees.
So it's a fact that cash transactions are the one which fuels the parallel economy, and the fact that there has to be some limit somewhere is an accepted position. The only thing which I see changing over a period of time is that in the last budget, the finance minister came back to say that rather than do a stick approach, why not use a carrot approach? And the approach which he advocated in the budget speech was to say that if there is a payment otherwise than by cash, so by a credit card, by a check or whatever is accounted, then there would be a bit of an abatement both in the VAT which is payable by the buyer and in the income tax which is payable by a seller. The approach of the SIT seems to be that you put a ban on such transactions. I'm not going into the constitutionality of whether under our constitution cash payments can or cannot be banned, but in principle I would very much agree that there is need to put a lid both on the amount of cash which one can hold and on amount of transactions which one can do using cash. The only thing which will come up in practice is that there are businesses which are happening in far-flung areas where salaries need to be paid, etc. Some carve-outs need to happen, but in principle one cannot fault the SIT at all.
Okay, let's see whether the government accepts these recommendations or not. As you pointed out, can't fault the purpose or the intent behind these recommendations. But Mr. Kanabar, let me ask you now about the income declaration scheme, because we've had the fourth set of FAQs being put forward by the government, by the CBDT today. Has it clarified matters or has it muddied waters further?
No, it certainly has clarified. Let me just contrast, Shireen, what's happening here versus what happened in the black money, the overseas black money declaration scheme, which was there from June to September. We had a situation where the government did not come out with clarifications on time, and the last and the most important clarification came less than a week before 30th September when the scheme was about to come to an end. Here, the government has been readily looking at all the questions and sort of coming out with clarification. And what has happened today? In fact, today for the first time, the government has said that although the scheme comes to an end, the payment of taxes can be deferred. Only 25% needs to be paid upfront, the balance 25% by 31st March, and the balance 50% by September next, which is very, very welcome.
In terms of any concerns, and I know that the finance minister, along with his... Yes, go ahead, sir.
So you were talking to Sapna earlier on, and there was this issue regarding whether there was any doubt as to whether taxes which were used to make the payment had to be accounted or not. I never had any doubt in my mind at all that the effective rate of tax was 45%. There was some discussion somewhere, and which I would like to believe the media blew up to say that the effective rate of tax is 31 and not 45. Even that time I was on record to say that this is not a right interpretation at all. And today all that has happened is that in terms of the circular, the position has been clarified that both the income as well as the tax thereon has to be part of an overall disclosure, meaning thereby that the effective rate of tax is 45 and not 31%. You cannot have a situation where a normal taxpayer, an honest taxpayer, pays tax at 34% and a person who's making a declaration under a scheme pays any lesser than that.
You're absolutely right, Mr. Kanabar, on that. The government seems to be making all efforts to ensure the success of the income declaration scheme, and I would imagine that this business of being able to pay in installments and giving the time period of 2 assessment years will certainly help in that cause. But finally, let me ask you, what are the further clarifications that you would like to see from the government? Because we understand that maybe we could see another round of clarifications from the CBDT. So anything that's left unaddressed?
So there was an interaction which we had with at FICCI today with the Finance Minister, Revenue Secretary, and there were a number of suggestions which have been made, and that is more to do with what we would like the government to consider as opposed to really clarification on the scheme. So a couple of things which emerged. One was that under the scheme today, the market value of the assets as on 1st June is the value on which you have got to pay taxes. Now let's assume that somebody had purchased a house 10 years back at a cost which is fraction of the market value today. How do you expect that person to generate the money to pay the taxes, particularly if it happens to be a residential house? So the suggestion put forward to the government was that a person, if he can demonstrate what is the actual amount of cash deployed, should be paying tax today on that, and then the incremental value should be subjected to capital gains tax as in when the asset is sold.
Okay.
So there were many such suggestions which were made today, and given the fact that the government is absolutely in a listening mode, it appears that more clarification should be around the way.
All right.